The dinner table in their Bellevue home was set with the precision of a magazine spread. Crystal glasses, roasted lamb, and the heavy silence of a marriage that had died months ago. Ethan watched his wife, Sarah, smiling at her phone, while their 7-year-old daughter, Lily, glared at him with a coldness that didn't belong in a child's eyes. It wasn't just the affair that was destroying them. It was the story Sarah had already begun to whisper into Lily's ear. A lie so convincing that it turned a father into a monster before he even packed a bag. If stories about the terrifying quiet before a family shatters resonate with you, stay with me as we unravel the truth behind the closed doors. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker, harder to hold on to. Ethan sat in his parked Volvo, the engine idling, watching the windshield wipers slice back and forth. Swish, thud, swish, thud. It was the only rhythm that made sense right now. On the passenger seat lay a manila envelope. It wasn't thick. Infidelity didn't need much volume to destroy a life. Just a few printed screenshots of text messages between his wife, Sarah, and Mark, a venture capitalist whose garden Ethan had designed last spring. The timestamp on the messages coincided with the night Sarah claimed she was working late on the crisis management campaign for her firm. Ethan turned off the engine. The silence of the affluent cul-de-sac pressed in on him. He looked up at his house, a modern slate-gray structure with floor-to-ceiling windows that he had designed himself. It was meant to be open, transparent. Now it looked like a fortress. He wasn't going to yell. He wasn't going to throw things. That wasn't who he was. He just wanted the truth. He wanted to ask Sarah why. He keyed into the front door. The warmth of the radiant heated floors hit him, a stark contrast to the damp chill outside. The house smelled of roasted garlic and rosemary, a domestic perfection that felt nauseating. "Daddy?" The voice was small. Ethan looked toward the living room. Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, was sitting on the beige sectional, clutching her knees to her chest. She wasn't watching the TV. She was watching the door, watching him. "Hey, Lil Bit," Ethan said, forcing a softness into his voice he didn't feel. He took a step toward her, reaching out to stroke her hair. Lily flinched. It was a small movement, a sharp retraction of her head, pressing deeper into the sofa cushions. Her eyes went wide, darting from his hand to his face. Ethan froze. His hand hovered in the air, a useless object. "Lily?" "Ethan!" Sarah's voice cut through the air like a glass shard. She was standing at the entrance to the kitchen, holding a glass of Pinot Noir. She was impeccable. Cashmere sweater, hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. But her knuckles were white around the stem of the glass. "Don't touch her," Sarah said. Her voice wasn't loud. It was measured, terrifyingly calm. "What?" Ethan frowned, lowering his hand. "Sarah, I just got home. I need to talk to you. Alone." "I don't think that's a good idea," Sarah said, stepping into the living room. She moved between Ethan and Lily, placing a protective hand on the child's shoulder. "Lily, sweetie, go to your room. Lock the door like we practiced." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "Like you practiced? Sarah, what the hell is going on?" Lily scrambled off the couch, giving Ethan a wide berth. Her eyes filled with a confusion that was rapidly hardening into fear. She ran up the stairs, the sound of her footsteps heavy on the hardwood. The slam of the bedroom door echoed upstairs. Ethan looked at his wife. He held up the envelope. "I know about Mark, Sarah. I have the messages. Don't do this." Sarah didn't even look at the envelope. She took a sip of wine, her eyes cold and calculating. She looked at him not as a husband of 10 years, but as a liability she needed to manage, a PR crisis to be spun. "You're tired, Ethan," she said softly. "You've been working too hard. You're imagining things again, paranoid, just like your father." "I am not my father," Ethan said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "And I'm not imagining Mark calling you goddess at 2:00 a.m. Stop lying." "Lower your voice," Sarah hissed, pointing a manicured finger at the ceiling. "She can hear you. She hears how angry you are. She's scared of you, Ethan. Everyone is." "She's scared because you're acting like I'm a threat." Ethan stepped forward. Sarah didn't back down. She smiled, a sad, pitying smile, that chilled him to the bone. She pulled her phone from her pocket. "I've already texted the neighbors, Ethan. I told them I was worried you might snap tonight. Mark advised me to have a safety plan." Ethan stared at her. The ground beneath him seemed to tilt. She wasn't just hiding the affair, she was rewriting reality. "You're twisting this," Ethan whispered. "You're the one who cheated." "It doesn't matter what I did," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It matters who she believes protects her. And right now, to her, you're just a monster in the hallway." Ethan looked up the stairs at the closed door of his daughter's room. He realized with a sickening clarity that the war hadn't just started. He had already lost the first battle before he even walked through the door. The extended stay America on the outskirts of Bellevue smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and stale cigarette smoke. A scent that seemed to cling to Ethan's clothes no matter how many times he washed them. It had been 4 days since he walked out of his own front door, or rather was escorted out by the 2 patrol officers Sarah had called, just as a precaution. Ethan sat on the edge of the sagging mattress staring at his phone. He had texted Mark, the man who was currently sleeping with his wife. He had drafted a dozen messages. "I know, stay away from my daughter. How long?" He had sent none of them. His lawyer, a cynical man named David, breathless from a lifetime of chain smoking, had been explicit. Radio silence. Anything you say can and will be read by a judge as harassment. Ethan's phone buzzed. It wasn't Mark. It was a notification from a neighborhood group chat he hadn't been removed from yet. "So scary about the incident at the Caldwells. Hope Sarah and Lily are safe. I always thought he seemed a little intense. Sarah is such a saint for keeping it together." Ethan felt a physical blow to his chest. The incident. There was no incident. There was a conversation. There was a manila envelope. But Sarah had turned a confrontation about her infidelity into a fable about his instability. She was a PR executive. She knew how to get ahead of a story. She controlled the narrative, and in her version, she wasn't the cheater, she was the survivor. He needed to see Lily. He needed to show her he wasn't the monster Sarah was painting. Against his lawyer's advice, Ethan drove to Lily's elementary school. It was 2:45 p.m. Pickup time. The rain had paused, leaving the asphalt shiny and black. He parked his rental car a block away, not wanting to spook anyone, and walked to the chain-link fence where parents gathered. He saw the familiar faces. The moms he had made small talk with at birthday parties. The dads he'd grilled burgers with on the 4th of July. As he approached, the chatter died down. It happened in a wave, a ripple of silence that started near the gate and spread outward. Mrs. Gable, the PTA president, turned her back to him, pointedly engaging in a conversation with another mother. A father he knew, Greg, looked at Ethan, then immediately checked his watch, avoiding eye contact. They knew, or rather they knew Sarah's version. Then the bell rang. A flood of children in colorful raincoats poured out. Ethan scanned the crowd, his heart hammering against his ribs. He spotted her. Lily was wearing her yellow raincoat, her backpack looking too big for her small frame. She was holding the hand of her teacher, Miss Albright. "Lily!" Ethan called out, waving. He tried to smile, to look like the dad who built Lego castles, not the volatile man from the rumors. Lily looked up. For a second, her face lit up. A reflex. But then she saw Ms. Albright tighten her grip on her hand. She saw the other parents looking at Ethan with wary, guarded expressions. Lily froze. She looked at Ethan, then looked at the teacher. Ms. Albright stepped in front of Lily, blocking Ethan's view. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice loud enough for the surrounding parents to hear, "please, you're not on the approved pickup list for today." "I'm her father," Ethan said, stepping closer to the gate. "I haven't lost custody. I have every right to pick her up." "Sarah called the administration this morning," Miss Albright said, her tone firm, like she was de-escalating a bomb threat. "She mentioned there might be a scene. Please don't make this harder for Lily." Ethan looked past the teacher's hip. He caught Lily's eye. He expected to see confusion. Instead, he saw genuine terror. Lily wasn't afraid of the situation. She was looking at him like he was a stranger who had broken into her house. "She hears how angry you are," Sarah had said. "She's scared of you." Ethan realized then that Sarah hadn't just lied to the neighbors. She had been working on Lily for months, maybe years. planting seeds. Daddy's stressed. Daddy's mad. We have to be careful around Daddy. Ethan took a step back, his hands raised in surrender. I'm not making a scene, he choked out. I just tell her I love her. Ms. Albright didn't answer. She ushered Lily back toward the school building. Lily didn't look back. Ethan stood alone at the gate, surrounded by the judging stares of people who used to be his friends, realizing that the truth didn't matter here. In the court of public opinion, the verdict had already been handed down, and he was guilty. The mediation room on the 42nd floor of the Columbia Center offered a panoramic view of downtown Seattle, but the gray mist outside swallowed everything, leaving only a white void against the glass. Inside, the air was dry and recycled, smelling of expensive cologne and fear. Ethan sat on one side of the mahogany table, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles were white. Beside him, his lawyer, David, shuffled a stack of documents with the weary precision of a card dealer in a losing game. Across the table sat Sarah. She looked immaculate in a navy blazer, her face a mask of practiced sorrow. Next to her was her attorney, a man named Roger with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We are not here to discuss my client's personal relationships, Roger said, sliding the manila envelope containing the text with Mark back across the table as if it were a dirty napkin. Washington is a no-fault state, Mr. Caldwell. Adultery is irrelevant to asset division. And regarding custody, it's actually a point of concern. Concern? Ethan's voice rasped. He hadn't slept in 3 days. She cheated. She lied. And now you're concerned about my ability to parent? We are concerned about your temper. Sarah spoke up softly. She didn't look at him. She looked at the mediator at the head of the table. The outbursts, the throwing things. She's very sensitive to loud noises lately. She wets the bed when she knows you're coming over. Ethan felt the blood rush to his ears. I have never thrown a thing in my life. And Lily wets the bed because she's stressed out by you coaching her. Ethan, please, David whispered, placing a restraining hand on his arm. Roger leaned forward, clasping his hands. We have a statement from the child's therapist. Dr. Evans notes that Lily exhibits signs of acute anxiety specifically related to her father's presence. She uses words like scary and loud to describe the home environment. Ethan stared at the document Roger slid forward. He recognized the therapist's name. A woman Sarah had insisted they see years ago for marriage counseling. A woman who played tennis with Sarah on Tuesdays. The fix was in. Every angle had been covered. This is a setup, Ethan said, looking at the mediator. She's gaslighting everyone. I want a forensic psychological evaluation. I want an independent guardian ad litem appointed for Lily. We can do that, Roger said smoothly. He didn't blink. But you should know what that entails, Ethan. It means strangers interviewing Lily. It means bringing a 7-year-old into a courtroom environment to testify about who she's afraid of. And given what she's been telling her mother, are you sure you want to subject her to that? The room went silent. The hum of the HVAC system seemed to roar in Ethan's ears. She's 7, Ethan whispered. Exactly, Sarah said. She finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were wet, a perfect performance of a mother protecting her cub. Do you really want to drag her onto a stand, Ethan? Do you want to force her to choose? Because she will choose me. She's already chosen. Ethan looked at Sarah's face. He saw the steely resolve behind the tears. She was holding Lily hostage. She was using their daughter as a human shield. If Ethan fired back, if he fought for his reputation, if he dragged out the ugly truth about Mark, the shrapnel would hit Lily first. David leaned in close to Ethan's ear. If we fight this, it's going to get very ugly. Very fast. It could take 2 years. Lily will be in the middle of it the whole time. And with the groundwork Sarah has laid, there's no guarantee we win. Ethan looked out the window at the white void. He thought about Lily's face at the school gate, the terror in her eyes. It wasn't natural, it was manufactured, but it was real to her. If he fought, he would be the man Sarah said he was, the aggressor, the source of conflict. To save her from the war, he had to surrender. What do you want? Ethan asked, his voice hollow. Roger smiled, opening a folder. Full physical custody to Sarah. You get supervised visitation every other weekend, subject to approval by Dr. Evans. You move out of the school district to minimize chance encounters, and you agree to a quiet settlement. Ethan, no, David warned. That's suicide. Ethan looked at the pen lying on the table. It looked heavy. He thought about Lily sleeping peacefully, without lawyers asking her why she was scared of Daddy. Give me the pen, Ethan said. The moving truck had already left for Chicago 2 days ago. All that remained was Ethan, a single suitcase, and the rental car idling in the driveway of the house he had designed with his own hands. The slate gray siding looked darker under the relentless drizzle, the windows reflecting a sky that refused to clear. He had 1 hour. That was the agreement. A final, supervised goodbye before he drove to SeaTac Airport and boarded a one-way flight to the Midwest. He wasn't running away. He was being excised like a tumor from the body of his own family. Ethan stood on the wet concrete of the porch. He didn't ring the doorbell. He knocked, a soft, hesitant rap that felt pathetic. Sarah opened the door. She didn't invite him in. She stood in the threshold, arms crossed, wearing a triumphant expression that she masked with faux pity. Behind her, in the shadows of the hallway, stood Lily. She's having a hard morning, Sarah said, her voice low. Don't make this difficult, Ethan. Keep it short. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He looked past Sarah. Lily? Lily stepped forward, but only because Sarah nudged her. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit he had bought her for Easter 3 years ago. Her knuckles were white against the synthetic fur. She didn't look at his face. She stared fixedly at his boots. Ethan crouched down, ignoring the damp cold seeping into his jeans. He tried to catch her eye, but she turned her head away, pressing her face into Sarah's thigh. Hey, Lil Bit, Ethan whispered. The nickname felt like a foreign language now, a relic from a civilization that had been wiped out. Daddy has to go away for a while, for work, and so everyone can be happy. Lily didn't move. I made you something, Ethan said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. It was a sketch he had done, a drawing of the treehouse they had planned to build together this summer. I wanted you to have this. He held it out. The paper trembled slightly in the wind. Lily looked at the paper, then up at Sarah. Sarah didn't say a word. She just tightened her jaw. The message was clear. Don't take it. Lily took a step back. Mommy said you broke the family, she whispered. The words were quiet, rehearsed, delivered with the terrifying innocence of a child repeating a lesson. Ethan felt something shatter inside him. It wasn't his heart. That had broken weeks ago. It was his resolve. He realized then that fighting this, trying to correct the record, trying to explain the complexities of adult betrayal to a 7-year-old, was a form of violence in itself. Sarah had won. To Lily, he was the bad guy, and the only way to be a good father now was to disappear so she wouldn't have to be afraid of the bad guy anymore. He slowly lowered his hand. He put the drawing back in his pocket. I love you, Lily, Ethan said, his voice cracking. I love you more than anything. Remember that. Even if you don't hear from me for a long time. He waited for a hug, a look, anything. Lily buried her face in Sarah's coat. Sarah looked down at Ethan. It's time, Ethan. You'll miss your flight. Ethan stood up. He looked at his wife, the woman who had shared his bed, his dreams, and who had now rewritten his history. You win, he said softly. But someday, Sarah, she's going to grow up. And she's going to ask questions. She won't, Sarah said coldly, because you won't be here to remind her. She closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking into place was final. Ethan stood there for a long minute, staring at the wood grain, listening to the rain drumming on the porch roof. He turned around and walked to the car. He didn't look back as he reversed out of the driveway. He merged onto I-405, the wipers beating a rhythm against the glass. He drove until the house, the neighborhood, and the city of Seattle were nothing but a gray blur in his rearview mirror. He was going to Chicago to build parks, to design landscapes for other people's families, while his own became a ghost story. He was the exile, and for Lily's sake, he would play the part perfectly. 15 years had polished the rough edges of the past into a smooth, impenetrable surface. Lily, now 22, and in her final year of law school, stood in the center of the living room, a cavernous space in a new, gated community in Medina. The walls were all glass, looking out over Lake Washington. It was a beautiful house, but like everything her mother touched, it felt more like a showroom than a home. Ivory is too pedestrian, Sarah said, flipping through a heavy binder of fabric swatches on the quartz coffee table. At 55, Sarah was still striking, though the lines around her mouth had deepened into permanent brackets of dissatisfaction. She had remarried 10 years ago to a tax attorney named Richard, a quiet man who treated Sarah with the cautious reverence one might show a ticking bomb. I like the ivory, Mom, Lily said softly, touching the silk sample. It's simple. Simple is just a nice word for boring, Sarah snapped, not looking up. We're going with the champagne overlay. It photographs better, and we need to finalize the guest list. Richard's partners are expecting invites. Lily pulled her hand back. It was always like this. Her life was a PR campaign managed by Sarah. Her law school application, her choice of university, even her fiancé, Andrew, a junior associate at Richard's firm, had all been guided by Sarah. Speaking of the guest list, Lily began, her heart thumping a jagged rhythm against her ribs. She had practiced this sentence in the mirror for a week. I was thinking about the procession. Sarah stopped flipping the pages. The silence in the room became instantaneous and heavy. The procession? Walking down the aisle, Lily clarified, her voice thinning. Since Richard is, well, he's great, but Richard will walk you, Sarah said, her tone closing the subject like a steel trap. I know, Lily said quickly, but I was just wondering if, has anyone heard from him? From Ethan? She didn't call him Dad. That word had been trained out of her vocabulary years ago. Ethan was the volatile man who left. Ethan was the cautionary tale. Sarah slowly closed the binder. She took off her reading glasses and looked at Lily with a mix of pity and disappointment that made Lily feel 7 years old again. Lily, Sarah sighed as if explaining gravity to a toddler. We've been over this. He signed his rights away. He moved to Chicago and never looked back. He hasn't sent a card, a check, or a letter in 15 years. Why would you want a stranger at your wedding? I don't, Lily lied. People will ask. Let them ask, Sarah stood up, smoothing her skirt. We tell them the truth, that he was unstable, that he chose his freedom over his family, that we are better off. She walked over to Lily and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. The touch was cold. You have a perfect life, Lily. Don't go digging up old graves. You won't like what you find. Sarah checked her watch. I have a meeting with the florist. You need to clear out the attic in the old guest cottage before the rehearsal dinner next month. I want those boxes gone. Richard wants to convert it into a wine cellar. Okay, Lily whispered. Good girl. Sarah kissed her cheek, airily, barely making contact, and swept out of the room. Lily stood alone in the glass house. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. She looked like her mother. Perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect posture. But inside she felt a hollow ache. He hasn't sent a card in 15 years. That was the line that always stopped her. The absolute silence. If he loved her, wouldn't he have tried? Even once? The logic was irrefutable, yet it sat heavy in her stomach like a stone. She looked at the ceiling, toward the attic of the detached garage where the remnants of their old life were stored. Sarah called them junk, but they were the only pieces of history Lily had left that hadn't been edited by her mother. Lily grabbed her car keys. She told herself she was just doing what Sarah asked, cleaning up. But deep down, as she walked out into the gray afternoon, she knew she was looking for something else. Proof. The guest cottage attic smelled of cedar and stagnation. It was a dry, dusty heat that coated the back of Lily's throat as she hauled boxes from the shadows into the single shaft of afternoon light cutting through the dormer window. Sarah had labeled everything with her characteristic precision. Tax returns 2015, holiday decor, charity gala receipts. Lily was 2 hours into the task, her hands gray with dust. She was moving a heavy plastic bin marked Office Misc 2009, the year of the divorce, when her foot caught on a loose floorboard. The bin tipped, spilling its contents across the unfinished plywood floor. Binders, old chargers, and staplers scattered. But at the bottom of the pile, a heavy black leather briefcase slid out. It was a Toomey bag, high-end, the kind Sarah used to carry when she was climbing the corporate ladder. Lily reached for it. It felt heavy, substantial. She expected it to be empty, discarded like the rest of the outdated electronics. She tried the zipper. It was locked with a small padlock, the key long gone. She should have put it in the trash pile. That was the instruction, clear it out. But the date on the bin, 2009, held her back. That was the year the silence started. Lily looked around the empty attic, feeling a sudden irrational spike of guilt, as if Sarah were watching from the rafters. She grabbed a pair of rusted gardening shears from a nearby shelf. With a grunt of effort, she wedged the blades into the zipper's teeth and twisted. The fabric tore with a sharp zip. She pulled the leather flap open. Inside, there wasn't just office clutter. There was a manila envelope thick with papers and an old BlackBerry phone. Its screen cracked. Lily pulled out the envelope. It wasn't sealed. She slid the papers out. They were printed emails. Sarah printed everything. She liked hard copies. The top email was dated March 14, 2009, 2 months before Ethan left. From sarah.caldwellprstrategies.net to markforventurecap.com. Subject, he suspects. Ethan found the text. He's going to confront me tonight. We need to accelerate the plan. If he files for divorce on grounds of adultery, I lose the prenup leverage. I need to make him the issue before he makes you the issue. Lily's breath hitched. She read it again. Plan? She flipped the page. An email from Sarah to her lawyer, Roger. From Roger. Legal to Sarah. Caldwell. Subject, re-custody strategy. Without a documented history of abuse, full custody is unlikely, Sarah, unless there is an incident. If you can get him to demonstrate volatility in front of the child, or if the child expresses fear to a mandated reporter, like a teacher, the courts will err on the side of caution. We need a narrative. Lily dropped the paper. Her hands were trembling so hard the pages fluttered to the floor. If the child expresses fear, she remembered the night Sarah would wake her up, whispering, "Shh, Daddy's angry again. We have to be quiet." She remembered Sarah gripping her hand at the school gate, squeezing until it hurt. She had been coached. She had been a prop in a legal strategy. But there was more. At the bottom of the bag, beneath the damning emails, was a stack of envelopes bound by a rubber band. The rubber had dried and snapped as soon as Lily touched it. The envelopes were blue. They were addressed to Ms. Lily Caldwell. The handwriting was blocky, architectural, familiar. Return to sender, refused. Lily picked up the top one. It was postmarked June 2009, 1 month after he left. She tore it open, her fingernails tearing the paper in her haste. My dearest Lil Bit, I know you might be confused. I want you to know I didn't want to leave. I'm in Chicago now. I miss our Sunday pancakes. I'm going to write to you every week until you're old enough to come find me. I love you to the moon and back. Dad, there were dozens of them. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, letters simply asking how school was. Every single one of them had been intercepted, collected, and locked away in this bag. Sarah hadn't just protected her from a bad father. She had stolen a good one. The air in the attic suddenly felt too thin to breathe. Lily fell to her knees, clutching the letters to her chest, a guttural sob breaking loose from her throat. The ghost story was a lie. The monster wasn't the man who left. The monster was the woman downstairs who was currently choosing champagne table overlays. Time seemed to dissolve in the dusty attic. Lily sat cross-legged on the rough plywood, surrounded by a halo of blue envelopes. She had read 20 of them, 20 out of hundreds. Each letter was a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture she had been staring at for 15 years. She picked up a letter dated October 2011. Happy 10th birthday, Lil Bit. I sent a package with that telescope you wanted. I hope you can see the stars from your window. Lily lowered the paper. She remembered her 10th birthday. She remembered crying because her father hadn't sent anything. Sarah had hugged her, stroking her hair, whispering, "He forgets, sweetie. It's not your fault he's selfish." There had been no telescope. Sarah must have intercepted the package, maybe threw it away or donated it. The cruelty of it was precise. It wasn't just about keeping Ethan away. It was about hurting Lily enough that she would stop asking for him. Lily grabbed the stack of printed emails again. She needed to understand the mechanics of the lie. She found an exchange between Sarah and Mark from the weeks leading up to the divorce. From Sarah, Caldwell, to Mark. Subject, the incident. He's coming over to get his books tonight. I'm going to provoke him. I need you to stay out of sight, but keep your phone ready. If he raises his voice, I'm calling 911. We need a police report on file to secure the restraining order. Lily closed her eyes, and suddenly the memory of that night washed over her. Not the hazy, fear-clouded version she had lived with, but the sharp, objective reality. She was 7. She was sitting at the top of the stairs. She remembered Ethan pleading, "Sarah, just let me say goodnight to her. Please." His voice hadn't been angry. It had been desperate, broken. She remembered her mother's voice, low and taunting, saying things Lily couldn't hear clearly. And then Ethan had shouted, "Stop lying to her!" That was the violence, a father begging not to be erased. But Sarah had rushed up the stairs, eyes wide with feigned terror, grabbing Lily. "Quick, into your room. Daddy is having an episode." Lily felt a wave of nausea so violent she had to lean forward, resting her forehead on the cool leather of the briefcase. She had been the weapon. Sarah had pulled the trigger, but Lily was the bullet that ended Ethan's life in Seattle. She looked at the date on the BlackBerry, the last text message sent from Ethan to Sarah, unread by Lily until now. "Tell her I didn't leave her. Tell her I left to save her from this war. Please, Sarah. Just give her that one truth." Sarah had never delivered the message. Lily stood up. Her legs were numb, but her mind was terrifyingly clear. The tears had stopped. Crying was for confusion, for grief. This wasn't grief. This was a cold, hard clarity that settled in her chest like ice. She gathered the letters, the emails, and the phone. She put them back into the Toomey bag, but she didn't zip it. She didn't want to hide it anymore. She looked around the attic one last time. The dust motes dancing in the light looked different now. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was complicit. Lily picked up the briefcase. It was heavy, weighted with 15 years of stolen time. She walked to the attic stairs. She wasn't the law student, the fiancée, or the dutiful daughter anymore. She was the judge, and she was going downstairs to deliver the verdict. The floorboards creaked under her boots as she descended, the sound echoing like a gavel striking a desk. Sarah was in the kitchen, holding a flute of champagne and examining a sample of floral arrangements. "Hydrangeas are too common," she murmured to herself as Lily entered. "We need orchids." Lily didn't say a word. She walked to the marble island and dropped the heavy Toomey briefcase onto the countertop. The sound was a dull, heavy thud that rattled the crystal flute in Sarah's hand. Sarah looked up, annoyed. "Lily, really, watch the—" She stopped. She saw the briefcase. She saw the open zipper. And then she saw the blue envelope in Lily's hand, the one postmarked from Chicago, 2009. The color drained from Sarah's face, leaving her foundation looking like a mask of clay. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was no longer smooth. It was sharp, brittle. "You kept them," Lily said. Her voice was terrifyingly steady. "Every letter, every birthday card. You kept them like trophies." "I was protecting you," Sarah said, instinctively straightening her back, falling into her role. "He abandoned us, Lily. Those letters, they are just words. Cheap words from a man who couldn't handle the pressure of this family." "He didn't abandon us," Lily corrected, placing the printed email about the incident on top of the briefcase. "You exiled him. You staged the fight. You coached me to be afraid. You told me he was a monster so you wouldn't have to admit you were the one who broke our home." Sarah stared at the email. For the first time in her life, she had no spin, no counter-narrative. The evidence was absolute. "I did what I had to do," Sarah whispered, her eyes hardening. "Look at you, Lily. You went to private schools. You're graduating law school. You're marrying Andrew. I built this life for you. Do you think Ethan could have given you this?" She gestured around the opulent kitchen. "He was a gardener, Lily, a dreamer. He would have dragged you down into mediocrity." "He was my father," Lily said, tears finally spilling over, hot and fast. "And you stole him." You let me grow up thinking I was unlovable, that he left because I wasn't enough. You watched me cry for him, and you said nothing." Lily took a step back. She pulled the engagement ring off her finger. The ring Andrew had bought, but Sarah had picked out. She placed it on the counter next to the stolen letters. "I'm not marrying Andrew," Lily said, "and I'm not staying in this glass house." "Lily, be reasonable," Sarah snapped, panic finally edging into her voice. "Where are you going to go?" "To find the truth." Lily turned and walked out. She didn't slam the door. She just left it open. Chicago was windy, the air biting and raw compared to the damp gray of Seattle. It took Lily 3 days to find the address. It wasn't hard. He was listed in the phone book under his own name. He hadn't hidden. He had just waited. The house was a small, weathered bungalow in a quiet suburb. It was nothing like the mansion in Medina, but the front yard was a masterpiece. Even in the chill of autumn, the garden was structured, beautiful, cared for. Lily stood on the sidewalk for a long time. She was 22, but she felt 7 again. She adjusted her coat, her hands shaking in her pockets. She walked up the path and pressed the doorbell. After a moment, the door opened. The man who stood there was older. His hair was entirely gray now, and there were deep lines etched around his eyes. Eyes that were the exact same shade as hers. He was wearing a flannel shirt and holding a pair of reading glasses. He looked at her. He blinked, polite confusion on his face. He was expecting a neighbor or a delivery. Then he stopped. He leaned forward slightly, squinting. His breath hitched. "Lily?" he whispered. The name came out rusty, like a prayer he hadn't dared to speak aloud in years. Lily tried to speak, but her throat closed up. She just nodded. Ethan didn't ask why she was there. He didn't ask about Sarah. He didn't ask for an apology. He simply opened the screen door and stepped out onto the porch. He fell to his knees, not caring about the cold concrete, and opened his arms. Lily broke. She fell into him, burying her face in the flannel shirt that smelled of soil and sawdust and memory. "I got your letters," she sobbed into his shoulder. "I got them all." Ethan held her tight, his own tears soaking into her hair. He held her as if the last 15 years had never happened, and as if he would never let go again. The glass house was far away, shattering into silence. Here in the small, imperfect garden, the roots were finally taking hold.